Welcome to the Next Pivot Point podcast. This season, I'm focused on sharing stories and ideas from experts on diversity and inclusion. In this episode, I will share some insights and ideas from my guest expert, Jeremy York. Together, we will leave you with some actionable tips to think about and discuss with your organization. We share this information because inclusive leadership is a journey. It requires bravery and courage, and you do not have to do it alone. At Next Pivot Point, I believe we are stronger together. We are one. So we're going to introduce Jeremy York. He's with us, and he is the lead consultant and president at Invigorate HR. And Jeremy says if you want your company to succeed, you have to put into place strategies that allow your people to succeed. As founder and president, Jeremy ensures that Invigorate HR does just that. Through his leadership, Invigorate HR develops and delivers client-specific solutions that are tailored to meet clients' needs and enhance their success. He has over 20 years of experience in human resource strategy and operations, holding various HR leadership roles. He has worked and advised all levels of management on critical business and people-related issues. These items include HR strategy, performance management, strategic planning, talent management, and so on. And he is a big fan of developing cultures based on mutual trust and respect and inclusion. So, Jeremy, welcome. So great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Julie. It's great to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
Well, awesome. We'll start out by filling in our listeners. You have this great, rich background in HR and talent development and people development. What got you down the diversity and inclusion path?
Well, I will tell you that, when I really believe in establishing environments of mutual trust and respect, and that means for everyone, regardless of their background, their situation, the color of their skin, their gender, their sexual orientation, any of that. And that's always been kind of my mantra, is that people should be able to come to work and really be their true selves, their whole selves, and really be free from any type of discrimination or judgment or et cetera, so they can be their best selves. And part of that said, hey, we've got all of these different folks within the workplace, and people don't really know how to work with them. And so that's kind of what I found. And so I started to get really passionate about getting into diversity and inclusion, as well as, the sense of belonging in the workplace, because I want people to, when they come to work, to feel good about what they do, to feel safe and to feel like they do belong. And so I thought, hey, Jeremy, what can you do to be able to help develop cultures of organizations to do this? And part of it is saying, hey, I can go in and help educate and help people understand what they don't understand or what they're curious about but are afraid to ask questions about at the same time. So that's really where my passion for this line of work came into it, because I believe that everyone just has the right to be able to come to work and do the best they can and be free of in a judgment-free zone, if you will.
Oh, yeah. Bringing your full self to work. And you've got some great data that's recently come out from SHRM and other credible organizations reinforcing that this isn't just a nice to have in company cultures, but it's actually a must have and is going to be incredibly important for retaining employees in the future. So share with our listeners some of the business case to support diversity and inclusion.
Right. So, I'm an advocate of SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, and I serve on their Membership Advisory Council. And recently, recently they launched a commercial all about inclusion in the workplace and its importance in the success of the future of our businesses and our companies. Now, SHRM for the last several years has really taken on and wrapped their arms around the whole idea of diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And so this commercial that was just produced really provided some great information, such as, 1 in 5 Americans have left a company due to toxic workplace cultures. And typically those toxic workplace cultures is because they don't feel valued, they don't feel accepted, they don't feel like they belong, they don't see other people that look like them, or they're not valued for their differences. And a lot of times people think, oh, well, it's differences based on visual differences. And that's not really it. It's basically based on differences of the way they think or the way that they process information or the way that they generate ideas or, come up with creativity. Those are things to think about too, because that all is part of the diversity spectrum. It also says that half of American workers say that they have been treated unfairly due to their age. And again, we typically like to think that, these are people who are older, but this now impacts people who are younger as well. With the different generations that do work within our companies and our organizations, we understand we have a wide variety. A lot of times older people are mistreated, but a lot of times younger people may be mistreated because of their age, dismissed because they don't have enough experience, or they have too much experience and they're not, really up to date on current events or what's happening or other types of things of that nature. So that's something to look at that exists in our workplaces as well. There's also people with disabilities are 2 times more likely to be unemployed. And, Julie, I think it's interesting as we talk about some of these other stats, but we talk about people who are, disabled, or people who have formerly been incarcerated. They're great folks that we can pull from in the job market. People who are willing to work, who can work, who want to start, who want to be self-sufficient. And getting talent back to work is a big initiative that SHRM's working on right now for the formerly incarcerated. And one of the stats that was just recently released was that nearly 700,000 of formerly incarcerated folks will remain unemployed for over a year.
Wow.
And isn't that amazing when you think about that? Over 700,000 folks that are out there that, are coming out of, incarceration, that are looking to get their lives back on track, that are looking for work, but yet we have this stigma or sometimes this bias toward folks who have been incarcerated as if they couldn't change, or as if they're going to, still continue to be dangerous. Now, obviously, we want to try to help these folks to be able to get acclimated and reacquainted with society. But, talk about untapped talent, but talk about the methods of getting them back in the workplace and how people may feel about them and how people may judge them, and, et cetera, because of either being disabled or being incarcerated or what have you. So that's something that we really think about too. And what really is also troubling is that when we think about our veterans and the commitment they had given to our country and the work that they've done, that, once they're able to kind of get back and want to get back into the workforce, more than 50% of them have trouble finding work.
Wow. Yeah. And what transferable skills they offer from the military.
Absolutely. And it's just amazing to me. And a lot of this is because of our workplace cultures and our ability to not be inclusive about people, because we have ideas about them, or we have stereotypes or these unconscious biases that exist in us or in our workplace cultures and our hiring managers. And all of these people that are out there who are wanting to work, or who can work, or who have great skill sets, et cetera, but we're not allowing them to because we're not providing this inclusive environment. We're not trying to reintegrate them into our workforces, which is troublesome, which is really troublesome.
Yeah. Well, and you think about the lost opportunities to get talent that might have different skill sets that might round out your team. And I think all too often we hear the code words of cultural fit. And, I always question, well, what does that mean exactly? Because I think it's signaling a lot of the biases that you're talking about that are holding these underrepresented groups back. And so really getting clear and intentional. And I know you've got some interesting case studies on companies that have gotten intentional about diversity. And one thing that I know I'm passionate about with my clients is, one great thought exercise is walking people through, what does our customer base look like? Who do we want to do business with? Who do we want to serve, for a nonprofit? Okay, like walk me through what they look like, think like, behave like, experiences, and how much are we reflecting that in the walls of our organization with our employees and specifically our leadership team, which is usually where the wheels fall off the bus. And so I'm curious, Jeremy, you tell us, who's getting this right? Can you point to some organizations that can help our listeners learn?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think a lot of people look at diversity and inclusion and belonging as this something that is more like, a lot of fluff, right? Oh, does it really matter that we have people here? Does it really matter that we take these initiatives? What does this really do, especially for the numbers folks, right? What does this really do to our bottom line? And how does it really impact our customers? Especially if our customers can't be, if our customers aren't working with our people face to face and they're doing everything electronically and what have you. Well, what people don't understand is that when you have folks that are within your employ that are of different backgrounds, whether that be ethnicity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic, whatever those different backgrounds are, just means that those people have the ability to be able to relate better with others with whom they serve. So, for example, AT&T has a really strong diversity inclusion initiative that it works toward. So much, in fact, that 42% of its workforce are people of color, because they know that they want their employees to reflect their customers, to be able to relate and talk to and work with their customers and understand their customer needs, which I think that's amazing that they've put that kind of commitment together to say, hey, it's important for us, for our staff, our employees, to look like the people we actually serve, so that we can help them to the best of our abilities. Because AT&T knows that, hey, when we have a diverse company, we outperform others. McKinsey and Company did a really thorough survey about folks and about people who or companies that employed diverse individuals, and they said, hey, here's what we found. Companies that are gender diverse, they outperform non-gender diverse companies by about 15%. Companies that are ethnically diverse outperform others by about 35%. Which is, when you think about that, and if you translate that to bottom line performance, that's amazing. Which means that really, that if an organization has a diversity and inclusion and belonging initiative and they really value that on average, they're going to outperform other companies that do not by about 25%. So you can relate that down to the bottom line to help folks who need numbers to quantify, some of this people related, and I'm doing air quotes, no one can see me, I'm doing air quotes when I say these people related initiatives, to see that it really does make a difference in how our companies perform. So I just find that information amazing, because it really truly does let us know that there is correlation between accepting people and allowing them to be who they are and valuing them for who they are and their differences, allowing them to bring their whole selves to work, impacts the bottom line, but also impacts the organization's culture. Because now if we have a culture that is inclusive, guess what? I want to stick around. I want to be there. I want to contribute. I feel loyal. I see other people that are like me. I can relate. I'm also learning new things because I'm around people who aren't like me. And I'm learning about their backgrounds and their cultures and their experiences, which just continues to add value because we're just developing ourselves as employees and contributors to the organization. But not just to the organization, but to society as a whole. One of SHRM's big slogans we're focused on is, together, let's create better workplaces and a better world. And that is really true. If we take it upon us as employers to really teach the importance of the value of differences that people bring, we can not just shape our workplaces, but we can shape the world, because we're developing ourselves and educating ourselves.
Yeah, what a noble purpose. And I love this intentional shift to inclusion, because you and I know it does. I love your message. It sounds like a nice thing to say. We're diverse and inclusive, and this is some sort of fluffy, not business minded message. And when you have organizations like SHRM that are very credible and focused in this space and know the business results associated with it, and have case studies like AT&T and great organizations like McKinsey and Harvard, and amplifying this message of it is important and it does drive business results, I think it really underscores when companies and organizations get intentional about inclusion, that they achieve far more than they would without it. And I'm curious, Jeremy, from your vantage point, much like myself, we're in and out of organizations, we kind of see what's going well and what's not going well. So can you think of organizations that you've worked with or that you've experienced that have gotten intentional with an inclusive culture? And how did they do that? Like, how, people always ask me, like, what's the magic bullet? What's the thing I need to do? What's the process? What would you recommend to intentional actions to drive an inclusive culture?
Yeah, that is a great question, Julian. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I've had the opportunity to work with some companies who actually do diversity and inclusion right, and ones who still kind of struggle at getting their arms around it. But the ones that I see that do a really great job at, creating inclusive environments where they do value other people is, one, they recognize that diversity is more than just the color of someone's skin or their sex, the visual elements. They understand a broader definition of diversity. A lot of people are still stuck back on these visual elements and don't realize that diversity is so much more. And that with diversity, okay, you may value diverse perspectives, but you also have to have the inclusion part it. Yes, you can value it, but now what are you doing to pull that into your organization to say, hey, we value that? So having a broader understanding of diversity, such as thought diversity, inclusion, ensuring that all people are included in the way that your organization does work, and also creating a culture that is really creates that sense of belonging for people where they feel comfortable, where they actually want to be. Those are companies, I think, that take the first step that do it successfully. As far as, kind of creating that culture, one is that understanding, it's that enlightenment. But I think you also have to take action with it by looking at, okay, how do we manage that in the organization? Well, one, do we have an inclusion program? Do we have a diversity, inclusion, and belonging statement? Do we have a program? Do we have strategies? What do we have? And for a lot of organizations, that means creating a role on the leadership team for someone who's like a chief diversity and inclusion officer who reports directly to the CEO. And that, Julie, is a statement in itself by saying, hey, we believe that this is so important to our operations as an organization that this is a leadership role who has direct access to the CEO of the organization. That sends a message to everyone throughout the company that, hey, we are really serious about what we're doing. We're really serious about taking this diversity and inclusion initiative to the next level for the organization.
Yeah, no, I share that often, broadening that definition of diversity and inclusion. And as you know, that helps our allies see themselves as a part of the conversation versus quote unquote the enemy, or somehow I have nothing to offer to this conversation if I'm white, cisgender, straight, male, traditional majority group categories. And it doesn't underscore the importance of this is this serious that we have a role dedicated to this. Now, the opposite side of that I see sometimes with diversity and inclusion officers is, everyone sees it as their job. And it's not my job because we have a diversity and inclusion person. So then the challenge is embedding it and getting everyone to understand this is everyone's
Absolutely.
job, right? And this is where allies come in and in developing leaders to be inclusive, which I know we're both passionate about. Now, Jeremy, I know you're also really passionate about LGBTQ plus issues in the workplace. And this is something that you lead conversations on. I'm curious from that diversity dimension or layer, help our listeners understand what would you offer to specifically address the issues of the LGBTQ plus community?
Yeah, that's also a great question as well, Julie. And I think this is one. This is always a topic that has a lot of emotion built around it because people have very strong perspectives or beliefs about LGBTQ plus individuals. And so what I would say the first thing is that when we're looking at creating a workplace, we're creating a workplace for everyone. And I always tell people, hey, I'm not looking for you to change your beliefs or to change your religion or religious beliefs or any of those kinds of things as an individual. All I'm asking for you is to start thinking and treating people as human beings and all people. And I think that is one of the first steps in being able to deal with LGBT Q plus issues in the workplace, right? Is because we need to kind of create that environment where we say, hey, we're not trying to change you. We're just saying, hey, this is a conversation. These are people who work with us just like everyone else, and we need to have that conversation. Secondly, it's kind of creating an open environment so that people can ask the right kinds of questions and have the right kinds of conversations. Because I find a lot of times that people are really apprehensive at talking about those types of issues because they feel like they're going to offend someone, or they don't really understand it. And so they don't really know what questions to ask. And then they feel incompetent, or they feel stupid because they're not asking the right kinds of questions. So it begins with that dialogue and that kind of conversation about it in general, and the ability to be able to make it okay for people to ask questions the best way they know how. And there is a difference between asking questions the best way you know how and asking questions that are inappropriate or that are meant to have malice, or are just meant to be mean in that regard. So I think helping people by creating that environment where they can ask those kinds of questions. I do a lot of training sessions on transgender employees in the workplace. That has been a pretty hot topic here the last few years. And that seems to be one where a lot of people are really uncomfortable with asking questions or understanding because they just don't understand. And so I try to help people take a little journey down, like what, who a transgender person is, what their journey has been. And so here they are in the workplace and what their journey in the workplace is going to be like. What we have to understand is that every worker who walks in our door every day, regardless of who they are, all has baggage they're bringing with them. All the baggage is different for each person. And sometimes we're more familiar with certain baggage than we are with the other. But the thing is that we have to treat everyone equally and the same and do our best to be able to understand and help people, be comfortable in the workplace and to create a workplace, one, that is safe for them, and two, that is respectful for everyone as well. And so that's kind of where I start with that whole dimension. When we're dealing with LGBTQ plus issues in the workplace, that's really kind of the starting point.
Yeah, well, I like that, looking at it holistically and making sure everyone's voice feels included. And I often say, especially for our allies that may not, cisgender straight people, for an LGBTQ plus person may not know how to have that conversation, and may not know what
Right,
questions to ask. So being okay with people fumbling a little bit and helping people create some brave spaces where we can talk. I mean, just simply explaining the acronym, I think, goes a long way for people. And you and I debated in prepping for this, is the plus, do we use the plus or not use the plus? And I know you're kind of, you said, inconsistent with it, but it is important to some people. And just like with race, words are important. Black versus African American. It's people have different
right.
preferences on these things, and just being open to that.
Well, the one thing that I always appreciate about you, Julian, that you point out is just the importance of the allies, the allies that we have at work. And a lot of folks think, oh, hey, I'm not part of that group. It's not my issue. This isn't my issue to deal with. Well, unfortunately, it is, because we're all, here together in the workplace and all have to work together. And I think we all want to support each other. And sometimes we have to be champions of diversity and inclusion issues that sometimes are not our own, in the sense of we don't belong to that group per se, but yet
Mhm.
we need to support them. Just as I might be male, but I need to support women issues in the workplace.
Right.
I may be, white, but I need to help support African American issues and things like that in the workplace. Even though as you said, you're straight, but you still need to be able to support LGBTQ plus issues in the workplace. We're all in this together, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, because it all helps us create this better workplace. It takes all of us to do this, and
Mhm.
literally, as SHRM says, to help create that better world. So I really do appreciate, all the work and how you always bring in the importance of the ally, because I think a lot of time that is forgotten when we're talking about diversity and inclusion and belonging kinds of components in our culture.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. It's really taken off. I mean, you're starting to see the allies message a lot of places. So I'm very thankful that this message is resonating with people, and I think it's really important for us, to consider what areas am I not identifying with as my own diversity dimension, and how could I be an ally? Because chances are, if I fit into those majority group categories, what those generally are: white, straight, cisgender, male, the more dimensions of difference I have, the less likely I am to feel like I belong in the workplace. So, what a chance to be an ally, and leverage your privilege if you are part of the majority group for somebody that may be underrepresented or may not be reflected in the organization as much. So, I appreciate
Absolutely.
your focus on this, Jeremy. Great wealth of information today. So if you had to distill it to one key thing, and I know it's hard to take our complex messages, but if you wanted to leave our listeners with one thing they could take action on, one thing they could commit to right away to be a part, to be on this diversity and inclusion journey, what might you offer?
Well, my one mantra that I live by is that we all are human beings. And I believe, and I challenge people to say, let's stop looking at all of the things on the outside, and let's just start treating people as they are, human beings, people. If we can understand that regardless of whatever differences that may exist, that deep down inside, we're really all the same, and we all deserve the same type of respect for each other, regardless. That's where we can start to water that seed and begin to grow that, and to help us understand that, the importance of diversity and inclusion and belonging, because we're all the same, we're all humans, and we all deserve the same respect and the same types of opportunities wherever we're at,
Yeah.
whether it's at work, outside of work, etc. So that's where I like to plant that seed and say, hey, you know what? We're all human beings.
Yeah. Well, and that it strips away all the different differences, right? It's not a contest who's different, right? We're all humans, and that uniting on that sense of belonging, that we want our workplaces to be good for all humans. I love that. Thanks, Jeremy, for that thought. Well, let our listeners
Absolutely.
know, what's the best way if they have questions or want to follow you. What are some good ways to connect with you?
Absolutely. So you can visit our website, which is at invigoratehr.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at York, York, Jeremy, Jeremy. We do post regularly, and happy to have you be part of our followership.
Yeah, well, I know I enjoy following your work, and I love all these great examples that you shared with us today. Thanks so much for being on the show, Jeremy.
Thank you, Julie. Appreciate it.
Did you know that you can find all 5 seasons of our 50 plus episodes at nextpivotpoint.com? And you can sign up for a complimentary 7-day preview of our new program, Lead Like an Ally, and order our new book, Lead Like an Ally. I appreciate you listening to this episode. Who do you know that needs to hear this message? Hit the share button. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I post daily. Julie Kratz, Kratz. I host this podcast because I believe we are stronger together. We are one.